On the other end, not this end.
Yeah. Today is March 24th, 2021. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Jimmie Marston in Ponca City, Oklahoma. Sir, where were you born?
I'm sorry?
Where were you born?
I was born in Woodward, Oklahoma.
Woodward. When's your birthday?
December the 10th, 1940 was when I was born.
1940. Who is your father?
Marion Lucius Marston.
And your mother?
Goldie Audrey Vaughn.
V-A-U-G-H-N.
H-N.
Okay. Did you go through school in Woodward?
No, other than elementary, not even elementary, like kindergarten. I'll just interject real quick if you don't mind.
Sure.
I was in the Woodward tornado in 1947. I lost my mother and two sisters, and my brother and I were beat up quite a bit. But anyway, my dad remarried about a year later, and then we went to Springfield, Missouri.
Tell me about the tornado. What happened?
Well, it was April the 9th, 1947, about 8:35 in the evening. It was kind of a stormy day, and just looked like another Oklahoma storm coming up. And of course, it was summer, so it wasn't quite dark yet. And the wind started picking up, and my mother, we were all kind of getting ready for bed, and my mother said that it looked like it's going to storm. And then it's just kind of that quick, the wind started picking up so heavy, strong, that I guess she got scared, and she and a couple of my sisters crawled under the heavy round oak dining table we had. There was a doorway going from the kitchen area into the bedroom, and she had my brother squat down on one side of the doorway. I squatted down on the other side of the doorway, and I remember the wind howling and dust flying through the house and doors banging. She went to the bedroom and tried to close the window, and then came back, and the last thing I remember until I woke up was the dust. I couldn't hardly breathe with the dust, and rubbing my eyes, and I looked up, I heard noises, and the last thing I saw was the walls coming in like this and the ceiling coming in like that, with the plaster falling and the laths and so forth. And then that's all I remember until I woke up. My brother and I, pretty much side by side when it happened. When we were found, one of us was on top of the other and about a block away. And it was raining, and my brother said, "I'll go get something." Of course, we had undershorts, is all we had on. His were ripped up like a hula skirt, just shredded. And I tried to stand up, I could move, but he tried to stand up, but he had such a big gash, he couldn't. But anyway, he crawled or done somehow, managed to go get a board, and we kind of huddled together to kind of keep the rain off of us. It's kind of funny in retrospect that I didn't do much to keep the rain off of us. But we heard a noise, and somebody digging next door through what had been a house. And my brother finally got enough nerve to holler out, "What are you doing?" And the guy said, "I'm looking for my family." He said, "Just lay still. There'll be an ambulance here before long." And sure enough, I don't know how long it was, but there was. And then we were taken to the Woodward Hospital, which was full. There were people and bodies laying all out on the lawn. We were taken inside, but it was just literally wall-to-wall people on the floor. And they tried to scrub some of the mud and pick some of the splinters out, and it was too painful, so they didn't do that. And then later, I guess they got a hold of somebody, and my older brother, one of them, come and picked us up, and we ended up spending a couple weeks kind of bedfast pretty much in a relative's house there in Woodward, and that's kind of the tornado.
So you were about a block away from your house?
I was about a block away when we were found, and I was terrified of tornadoes. In retrospect, I probably had PTSD then. I just didn't realize what it was, because every time a storm came up, I was terrified. I would shake, and of course, I guess I would, remember in the back of my mind, associated that with death and destruction and so forth. But it took me years to ever get where I wasn't freaking out over a storm.
You said you lost your mother?
Mother and two sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah. My oldest sister, my mother and younger sister, was killed right away. They were blown into a big oak tree across the street, and I was told that it broke every bone in their body. I didn't get to go to their funeral because of her own condition. But then my older sister was evacuated to OKC Children's Hospital, and she lived about a month, but finally succumbed to her injuries and had severe spinal injuries, and that was about it.
What are your sisters' names?
My sisters,
Yeah.
the ones that got killed, were Arleta Pearl Marston. She was age 15, and Darla Ann Marston was age 9. She was 3 years older than myself.
Did you have any warning the tornado was coming?
None, none. I mean, it was another stormy Oklahoma night,
Yeah.
That was it, but no warning at all.
Okay.
And no cave or cellar to go into. An older sister was living in the home. She tried to run out the back door to get to the neighbors who did have a cellar, but the wind blew her back under one of those old-fashioned washing machines with the tall legs. Probably saved her life because it was so heavy, but no, none of us, we didn't know what a cellar was. I didn't anyway.
Yeah.
Sure, my parents did.
Did you stay in Woodward after the tornado?
Until my dad remarried, well, take it back. When I was able to get out of bed and around, I had an older married sister in Fairview, and I went to stay with her.
Okay.
And I stayed with her and her family until Dad remarried.
Okay. And when did you graduate high school?
Where or when?
Where and when?
Springfield, Missouri, 1958.
Why did the family move to Springfield?
Well, that's where my stepmother-to-be was from. She had a house there, and after they married, of course, my dad had no house after all of that, so I guess that's how they ended up there. And eventually, they bought a home, and he was a construction worker, and he traveled all over western Kansas. He was a cement finisher on these concrete grain elevators, so he would be out on jobs, and my stepmother and I would stay there and he used that as a home base when he wasn't
What's your
out working.
stepmother's name?
Myrtle Marston.
Okay. In your schooling, who was your favorite teacher?
Oh gosh. I had a history teacher. Her name was Miss Boyd. She was probably in her late 50s, but just a really firm, what I call firm but fair. I was such a mischievous kid that it's a wonder she didn't throw me out of school, but she was very tolerant, and she's just a nice person.
Okay. What did you do after high school?
I went in the Army. I'd always wanted to be in the service, and as soon as I graduated, I tried to get in the Navy, and they said I couldn't because I had come from kind of a Navy family. And they said I couldn't see far enough without my glasses. And I said, well, something's wrong here. I've got a couple of brothers, one for sure, whose eyes were a lot worse than mine. He made it in. But I found out later, and this is what I suspected, I wasn't aware of the quota system. So, they had enough enlistments that month, they could be a little more restrictive. So that's probably why I got passed. I said, well, to heck with you. And I went down to Army recruiter. He said, can you hold a rifle? And I said, yes. He said, okay. Mine was kind of joking, but that was kind of it. But that's how I ended up in the Army.
Okay. When did you join the Army?
In September of 1958.
Okay. Where did you go for basic training?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Fort Lost in the Woods.
Yep.
Tell me about basic.
Oh, I got along fine. I got homesick. I thought seriously about going AWOL, but I didn't. I stuck it out, and it was an experience. But I look at, in retrospect, I look back and in the same way that I tell young people that kind of don't know what they want to do. If you're really not sure, consider the military as an option. You don't have to make it a career. It's not for everybody, but I think it's good for anybody at least it was good for me in terms of teaching discipline and respect for authority.
Oh, yeah.
And the first time I had to be totally independent from family for financially, so I guess it kind of made an older boy out of me.
What type of training did you have in basic?
Just your basic combat training with crawling under the wires with machine gun fire, long marches, and bivouac for a week, living out in the woods and that type of stuff. But
tell me about your drill instructors.
well, I only remember the incident. I couldn't tell you what they looked like or anything, but I'll never forget having gone on one of these big marches, and I was tired than the dickens, and all I wanted to do was get back in the barracks and go to sleep, and they put us in formation and drug on, and he started marching the line and going from line to line, and he'd stop occasionally, say something to somebody, and he came to me. He said, "What's the matter, soldier? Look like you lost your last friend." I thought I was being smart, and I said, "I have, Sergeant." He looked and he said, "You haven't lost me. I never was your friend." But that's the only really recollection, and other than graduation and so forth.
After basic, where'd you go?
I went to meat and dairy hygiene school. I wanted to be a medic. They sent me to the meat and dairy hygiene veterinary food inspector school in Chicago. And this wasn't for me. I tried from day one to tell them this isn't what I signed up for. I don't want to candle eggs and inspect dates on meats and stuff. I want to be with the blood and guts. And so anyway, he said the only way you can get out is to fail. I said okay. And so when it come time to take the test, I just started marking answers. Wasn't right necessarily, but I knew it was a way out, an honorable way out for me. Maybe not in some people's eyes. But anyway, then they reassigned me to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, and the Army's medical basic training. And I went there for basic and advanced medical training.
Tell me about your medical training.
Well, it was kind of like what you see on MASH in that sense, only on an artificial level. Make splints, giving IVs, learning to start IVs, injections, bandaging, splinting, arm slings, using whatever for splints, whatever, and this basic, very basic medicine type things, aspirins and penicillin, stuff like that. But I got through it fine because it's what I wanted to do.
How long did your training last at Fort Sam?
It was 4 weeks of basic combat medical training and then another 8 weeks of advanced medical specialist training.
How did they compare the basic and advanced?
Well, the advanced was more to my liking because it got more into deeper things, if that makes sense, in terms of just your basic splinting and stuff like that. So we got to do a lot more practical, hands-on kind of medical stuff. Okay. And from there I went to Germany and spent about 18 months roughly, and I was going to re-enlist, but I didn't want to. I had been reading about helping people, and of course medical helping people, but I started reading about social work psychology specialists. So I re-enlisted for that, was sent back to Fort Sam Houston.
Okay. Where'd you go in Germany?
The first time I was stationed down in Bavaria at the Alps, 5th Army NCO Academy Dispensary, right at the foot of the Alps. But for some reason, they were too full or whatever. I was excess, so they sent me to Mannheim, Germany.
Were you assigned to a unit in Germany?
The one they sent me to, I can't remember the name of it. It was a little town. But again, that was short-lived. Okay. And then I went to Mannheim, and I was assigned to the 130th Station Hospital, attached to the medical clinic in Mannheim.
Okay, that's the 130th Station Hospital.
Right.
Okay. What'd you do there?
What I call your usual medical stuff, everything from giving shots to running the records, handling medical records, checking people in, minor wound stuff, giving allergy shots and other routine injections, and then learned to, the optician needed help, so I kind of learned how to dispense and fit and so forth glasses and stuff, but that's pretty much how that year and a half roughly was spent.
Okay.
She'll get that. Yeah.
Okay. And you in Germany how long?
I was there roughly 15, 18 months.
Then you went back to Fort Sam Houston.
Then I went back to Fort Sam Houston for the social work / psychology specialist school for 8 weeks. And
What kind of school is that?
it's just, it's kind of like going to a psychology and sociology classes in college and practice interviewing skills and your basic theoretical stuff about mental health and the mind and people's behavior and so forth. And then practical interviews of which you were graded on and stuff like that. I enjoyed it, and then I went to, from there I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma as my first regular duty assignment after I became a, quote, military counselor, and I stayed there until I went to Germany again, about less than 2 years. And then,
Okay. What unit were you with at Fort Sill?
you know, is the Fort Sill Station Hospital. I don't even know if
Okay.
it had a number,
Okay.
but it was the hospital
Okay.
at Fort Sill.
How'd you travel to Germany?
I first went by ship. The first time I went to Germany by ship, that's when I went to Mannheim and so forth. But it was on the, I can't even remember the name of the ship, General William W.O. Darby, I believe was the name. And came back from Germany. I flew back, no, I'm sorry, I came back by ship too. Here's the ironic thing to me. I came back from Germany when the second time I came back by ship on the same ship that I went to Vietnam on about 3 or so years later, the U.S. Simon Buckner, USNS.
When you were going to Germany on the ship, how'd you pass the time?
I got to be, I asked them if they needed any help in the dispensary on board, and said, yeah, they were looking for somebody to maintain the dispensary after hours, during the night in case there was an emergency or something. So it worked out good for me because I got to stay in one of the wardrooms with a porthole and look out and didn't have to share it with anybody, as opposed to being down in the troop compartment. So that worked out real well.
Many guys get seasick?
I got a little, but not, there was all kinds of seasickness, but it didn't affect me too much. But coming back, that North Atlantic was really rolling, and I got sicker than a dog. And making a stand in formation out on the deck that was heaving and going to side, I said, this is crazy. People get hurt out here. But anyway, I made it, got sick along with everybody else.
How long did the trip take to Germany?
As I recall, we got there about roughly the 6th or 7th day. So it was a good 5+ days to get there.
What did you do the second trip to Germany?
I flew the second time and just came back by ship. But then I was stationed in Stuttgart,
Okay.
5th General Hospital, Stuttgart, Germany, down south, again close to Bavaria. And stayed there until my time was up. I decided to get out of the Army. And of course my wife was with me, and our oldest son was born there. And I worked at the psychiatric clinic, inpatient, outpatient psychiatric clinic during my time there.
So from Germany, where'd you go?
Germany, got out of the service.
Okay.
Went back, I was discharged at Fort Hamilton, New York.
When?
That would have been in 63, let's see, 62. Yeah, 63. And then went back to Woodward, I'm sorry, Springfield, Missouri. My stepmother and dad were still living there. Went to work for Lily Tulip Cup Corporation, printing these paper cups for McDonald's and other fast food industries, running a 3-color offset press. Wanted to go to school, had ambition to go to school. I couldn't afford it. I had one child, and working full-time, working part-time, also at a insurance company as a clerk, and in between trying to sleep and trying to work those 2 jobs, it didn't work out. So I said, there's got to be an easier way to get an education. So I re-enlisted and went back in the military.
When did you re-enlist?
I'm sorry?
When did you re-enlist?
It was in April of 1965. I was sent to Fort Polk, Louisiana for reissue of clothing and so forth, since I'd been out about 18 months. And after getting orders, I was assigned to 1st Air Cav Division, Fort Benning, Georgia. So anyway, I reported there, and I come real close to going airborne, but I didn't. The company I was assigned to originally by orders, I walked into the orderly room, and the first sergeant looked at all the papers, and he said, well, you know, this is an airborne company. We support an airborne brigade, and everybody in the unit has to be airborne qualified. Do you want to go to jump school? He said, it's an accelerated jump school because of the building up and prep for Vietnam, or I can transfer you next door to B Company, and they support a leg unit. And I said, I think I'd rather walk than jump out of planes. So that's what I did. And then
What unit were you assigned to in the CAV?
I was B Company, 15th Med Battalion. I was later, when I found out and got in contact with the division psychiatrist, he talked to the right people and had me attached. I was still assigned to B Company, but attached to headquarters and headquarters company in the division, for the division psychiatric facility, which was just a big tent. But anyway, that's kind of it. When I was in B Company, we left in August, got to Vietnam in September, went by ship.
Of 60?
Went by ship of 65. We left Fort Benning on the 15th of August, roughly, and then we got in Vietnam about 28 days later.
Tell me about the trip to Vietnam.
I thought I was in the Navy. I was on that ship for so long. We got off. We had one break. They stopped in, they took a heck of a long route. They left Charleston, South Carolina. We went by bus from Fort Benning to Charleston. There we boarded en masse in combat gear, up the gangway to the ship, down to the hold of the ship, on that sweaty, filthy, miserable heat. But anyway, I forgot, lost my train of thought.
What ship were you on?
That was the same one I had come back from Germany on. It was I think it was Simon Buckner, as I recall, Buckner, I believe it was. And that was the irony. But on the ship there, other than practice, a few medical kinds of things, there was PT training, customs, Vietnamese customs language training, and boredom. Pretty much. That was about it. Find something to do, stay out of the sergeant's way, and we put on some detail. And
what type of details did you have on the ship?
Other than helping clean the compartment, I really didn't have any. Sometimes I would volunteer to help where some of the medical units were, but it was minor. It was mainly just, I call it ghosting for the most part.
You go through the Panama Canal?
We went through, and that was I started to say and got sidetracked. We went to Charleston. They loaded us on the ship. They took the long way around, and it would have been much easier, I think, to have gone to the West Coast and leave from there. because that's where we eventually left from anyway. But anyway, we went around through the Panama Canal. That was an experience. That was kind of interesting. And then down by the coast of Cuba, ended up in Long Beach. We spent, they gave us shore leave 4 hours. We got to go to Long Beach. And then back on the ship and didn't set foot on land till we debarked in Quy Nhon Harbor in Vietnam.
And you landed in Vietnam when?
I think it was the 17th, roughly the 17th of September of the same year, 65. I may be off 1 or 2 days. But then they took us by Chinook helicopters to Ankh itself. And at that time, Ankh, the only people there were some advanced party people who had started clearing the airfield and the camp proper. So it took quite a while, but all of us every day, officers and everybody, got their machetes and whatever, and we hacked brush to make the clearing, and it was kind of known as the golf course, as you know. And,
Yes.
that was all brush pretty much when I got there, and we did a lot of manual labor.
What type of quarters did you have?
I slept in a pup tent, shared a pup tent with this big old guy. I don't remember where he was from, but he took up about half or 3/4 of that tent, little pup tent, but that was all right. But anyway, we stayed there, and the first night there, here I am. I was a little older than the average. I was 24 when I went to Vietnam. I'd been in the Army 6 years. And of course, the average age, I think, as you know, is around 19, give or take. But anyway, first night there, Sergeant kicks my feet, says, "We're surrounded. We're expecting an attack. Get up." And I said, "You got to be kidding me." And then pretty soon, all the tracers started going over, and I stumbled around, and I grabbed my boots and my little New Testament and headed out towards the foxhole. I found it when I fell in, but it was so dark. But anyway, and then to lay there and watch them tracers, and I didn't know if they're friendly tracers or anything. I couldn't tell the difference, but I could just imagine. And I said, "Man, people get killed doing this stuff." And but we survived, and that was that.
Have any contact with the local people around Ankh?
Not directly, other than as shopkeepers, and you bought a little souvenir or something like that.
Now, was the calf patch up on Hong Kong Mountain at that time?
There was a makeshift one of sorts. I don't know if it was the one that's on the logo or not. I'm pretty sure it was, because I remember looking at that patch. So I'm pretty sure the engineers or whoever put that up pretty soon, or pretty quickly.
So what were your duties there besides machete?
Well, when the brush was cut and we were kind of released, if you will, went back to B Company, and then it was just routine medical call, help with sick call, stuff like that, and of course the usual military police calls, things like that, but not many details or anything. Fill in the water bags, the Lister bags, stuff like that, but mainly, again, there was help out with the wounded, and most at that time we were just sick. There wasn't a whole lot of wounded coming in, although I volunteered to maintain a radio watch on the radio jeep, directing incoming traffic and stuff, just for something to do, pass the time away, and occasionally it'd be a medevac come in and you'd have to direct them, and then depending on the number of casualties, I'd take this old Army mule, and you know what that is, and drive it over to the helipad and pick up the body or bodies, typically is 1 or 2, and then bring them back to the unit.
Yeah.
And then I got transferred to back up just a second. While I was in B Company, that's when General Moore and his company run in, or his battalion ran into the trouble in the Ia Drang. And also, a lot of people don't know that, but I mean, it was called the Ia Drang or Play Coup campaign, I think more properly. But anyway, our company, B Company, was sent up to set up an aid station, clearing station, if you will, at Camp Holloway there in Play Coup. So we went by convoy. I can't remember the name of the pass, but Mang Yang Pass, I think, but I'm not positive. Anyway, we set up an aid station there, and I set up a little shelter half, and we stayed busy. It was either feast or famine. It wasn't a lot to do, but when the casualties started coming in, then it was more than you could handle, and that's where some of my worst memories are. Is those things like that.
Yeah.
That I wondered later, and then said, no wonder I started having dreams and stuff about all that crap, triaging people and setting the dead outside the tent and helping the doc when somebody die on you, and stuff like that. I got so I felt guilty later, but I said I got to get out of here for a little bit. So I asked if I could go take a break. I don't even know if I asked. I went back to my shoulder half and just laid there and so forth, and had a bunch of sad thoughts.
Yeah.
And then went over and asked if I could change jobs for a little while. So I went in the Ward 10 itself, where guys had already been patched up, or or they were just the sick folks, and word of comfort, passing out water or Kool-Aid if we had it or whatever, just to try and make them feel a little better. And the other part of that was, other than the trauma that kind of affected me, was the Graves Registration had set up a tent about 50 yards, open-sided tent, a big one. And I'd look out there, and they were hosing down bodies. And man, that really got to me. At least they were taking them, obviously getting them prepped to send to Saigon for shipment home. And that was kind of troublesome too, but we got through it. And then after that, I managed...
What was the main casualty you had from the iron drain?
I'm sorry, the what?
What type of casualties did you have?
Everything from traumatic amputations. Most of the ones that I seen were just gunshot and shrapnel wounds and stuff like that. I never saw a lot of the traumatic injury, but I spent a lot of time helping the docs and in the triage, and running from one patient. Of course, it was more than myself. There were other medics there too, but again, it was feast or famine. You just couldn't, you didn't have time to think about a whole lot, and then you'd start thinking about it, after the...
So were you in a field hospital?
It's a clearing station is basically a field hospital. It's kind of like a MASH unit.
Okay.
People come in, they're flown in. In fact, they trickled in originally when the Idrang first started. And then, of course, they started, there was one time, I know they were bringing in by the Chinookfuls, and I don't know how many litter or ambulatory patients they hold, but they'll hold like 36 men in their combat gear. But anyway, they were coming in, and there were that many. And then isolated, medevacs coming in. Sometimes a truck, depending if they weren't too seriously wounded, kind of the walking wounded. But yeah, it's a clearing station. It's I call it kind of like a triage. Okay. The worst ones are earmarked for shipment further to surgery to Quin Yon or to wherever in Vietnam, and the less severe or likely to live, we do some real emergency stuff here. They probably make it, stabilize them, move them out.
Okay. How long were you there at the Pleiku station?
It was until I would say a good month or so. It was until just before the battle started, and until it wound down sometime in November.
When was the Iron Drink Valley?
It was, I can't remember the date exactly, and I should know because I've researched it so much. It ran from November. It was during the month of November. It may have carried over a week or so either way, but that was when the main part of it was. And of course, as you know, it was the first time that a U.S. forces had met and engaged a full-fledged North Vietnamese division, or troops anyway. I'm not sure about the size.
Have you seen the movie?
Oh yeah, yeah, I did. I thought it was pretty realistic.
Yeah.
But,
so, did you go back to Ankei from Pleiku?
yes, went back, and I got assigned to the division psychiatric section, and
Have they built the hooches yet on K?
no, everything was tent.
Okay.
The only some of the officers had started, and the like EM clubs and stuff had started to make some temporary, more permanent type with either wood or bamboo or something about halfway up, and then covered by tent and stuff. But no, it was pretty much, for the most part, basic
Okay.
military OD tents,
Okay.
you know.
So what was basically your average day at on K?
Feast or famine. I'm serious. You either had a lot to do or you look for stuff to do and something to pass the time away.
What type of people did you have any casualties or what?
We had, in headquarters company, I worked with the division and worked for the division psychiatrist who didn't live with us, but he lived in, with the bigwigs up there. Real nice guy. But anyway, and the division social worker. The division social worker lived in our company area. But I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
What your average day there?
Oh, sometimes I get put on detail, the usual cleanup detail, police call. I'd go over to the ward tent, and if they had any, casualties or sick people, sometimes Vietnamese would come in to be treated, and I'd try to help them, just routine, basic medical stuff. Or I'd try to improve my little living area by, buying a little bamboo shade to keep the sun out.
Are you still in a pup tent?
No, we had moved, by then, we had moved to, it's a big, I call it, I forget the size of the tent.
Hold on.
I can't shut it
We'll just let it chime.
off. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go
So
again.
that you weren't in the pup tent anymore. You were in
No, we were in a, forget what you call them, I call them platoon-sized
a
tent.
GP medium.
Yeah, it's GP medium. It's held about, if you had bunks in there, probably 20 or 30 bunks. And we didn't have near that many. We had about 6 or 8 cots, if you will. And then the living quarters, the rear of that tent, were the 3 techs. And we stayed there, made our kind of separation, a little hooch. And yeah, we had some psychiatric casualties. Not a whole lot, but we did. We did a lot of field consultation work. We'd go out, in fact, we'd been out to Hal Moore, his unit. I don't know that I ever met him, but certainly his subordinates we met and explained the mental hygiene consultation program and how we might be able to help troops and so forth, and just to let them know we were there. But that was quite a time. The most interesting psychiatric casualty that I personally saw, there were 2 incidents that I'll never forget. And one is a guy who was catatonic. He would get in a frozen position on the floor like a dog, not move, or he would bark like a dog with his neck crooked in an awkward position, barking like a dog. And the only thing that the doc said, just give him intermuscular shot of saline solution. You think he's a placebo. You think he's getting the real thing. And he was eventually evacuated. Another one, the other incident was a soldier who had been in combat situation not too long before I saw him, and he sounded pretty normal, if you will, but he said, all of a sudden he said, what would you do if I took out a knife and cut my wrist? And I said, well, what would you want me to do? And back quick, he whipped out a knife and sliced one of his wrists, and the blood started going over everywhere. I thought I handled it pretty well in retrospect. I just kind of took him by the arm, said, come with me. We walked 20, 30 yards to the medical tent. They passed him up. He'd come back, and I said, now clean up the blood. I gave him a mop. You made the mess, you clean it up. And it was probably therapeutic. It was good for him,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
What about the wildlife around Ankh?
Well, I never saw tigers. Saw a few monkeys, mostly snakes and insects that I saw personally. We had one of the guys I was with had killed a 12.5-foot king cobra. That was kind of interesting. We had some pictures taken with him. While we were in Pleiku, I managed to get from this soldier. He was going home or didn't want it. I got a little capuchin monkey, and he sat on my shoulder, and he was kind of a pet, you know. But I had to get rid of him when I got back to Ankh because of health reasons. So,
Did you work with the mountain yards?
no, I mean we had a few come in as for medical treatment, but that was an unusual kind of situation.
And so how long were you at Ankh?
Well, from September to through July the 28th of '66, with the exception of that month in Pleiku.
Yeah.
That was just a temporary type thing.
Besides the Iron Dragon Pleiku, what's your most vivid memory of Ankh?
This may sound kind of weird, but Life magazine, I forget that, it had to have been in '65 or '6, put out an article called Sin City. You know, it was what it amounted to was controlled prostitution.
Yes, yes.
Because Ankh Village, so the medical people in the division, in order to try and stem some of the diseases and stuff, okayed this enclosure. I don't know if you were ever in that area or not. When I was there, it was enclosed by barbed wire, and then it went under the guise of cafes and you know, entertainment. It was entertainment, all right, but of a different kind. The girls that applied their trade there are doctors. They had to check in every once in a while on a routine basis for medical exams for obvious reasons. But my most vivid memory was the helicopters coming and going and the dust flying, and then the incessant rain, you know, hot and dry, hot and wet. Took some getting used to, but
What about the monsoons?
well, I came to kind of curse them because you just get things settled in here. You dig a little ditch around your tent when you was living in the, you know, the little pup tent, and it didn't matter what you did. The water you couldn't get it fast enough or deep enough to drain out, and everything was soaked and damp and smelly, and you know, as you know, it just if you tried to keep anything dry, it was a chore. And if you didn't, you run the risk of mold and it getting ruined and stuff. But the constant noise, I think, was one thing that will never get out of my head. And that constant taking off of helicopters. And especially when we were right across the road, literally, from the smaller ones, you know. But
The Hueys?
yeah, the dust. And of course, later on, most of them settled down on the golf course itself. But there was 5 or 6 across from us there most of the time, and the little observation choppers. I forget what they were, OH-1 or something like that. But anyway, that was the sights and sounds and smells, I think, and of course the thing that I never got out of my head totally was the blood and the death. That stayed with me for years.
The blood and
The death.
the death, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, did you fly?
Did I? Only as a passenger, not very often.
Okay.
No.
Now, when you were in the where would you go in a helicopter? Did they take you out somewhere or what?
The one time, unless we were being airlifted to like Pleiku from Ankh, was the one time I told you I kind of volunteered as a medic / door gunner. They were going out to treat some Montagnards villagers in They had this medical campaign. I can't recall the name of it. But that was the only time I really flew other than the big chopper.
Was that on a Huey or Chinook?
It was on a Huey.
Huey. Okay.
Sitting in the door, probably like you did or other people did, with the gun, just the M16,
Yeah.
ready to go. But fortunately, I was wondering like the Dickens, what am I going to do? They start shooting at me.
So, from Vietnam, where'd you go?
Vietnam, went to William Beaumont Hospital in El Paso, Texas.
What'd you do there?
I was a social work specialist, and the hospital worked outpatient, inpatient psych wards.
At Fort Bliss?
Well, it was actually William Beaumont. Okay. It's not part of Fort Bliss. It may be now. It wasn't then, separate. But yeah, I did that, and that's when I decided to get out of the Army. And so I got out in '65, and then went back in and re-enlisted in 60. When did I get out? Well, anyway, I was out about a year, 24 months, and then re-enlisted, okay, roughly. And then I decided to make it a career at that point.
So when you re-enlisted, where did you go when you re-enlisted?
That's when I went to Fort Benning, when I re-enlisted in 68, I guess it was, I'm sorry. Got out in 65 and went back in 68. In the interims when I worked at the printing company, okay, and so forth. And then went back to Woodward, where I grew up and still had a lot of family. My wife had family there, and worked at Trico's Westwear, cutting out patterns on a big long table and cutting out materials for Western clothing.
I've interviewed Orland Trico.
I'm sorry?
I've interviewed
Orland
really? Trico.
Yeah, I know who he is for sure.
And his sister.
I don't know his sister. I probably saw her.
TV ball.
I know who she is, but I don't, and I've probably seen her. It just...
I've interviewed both of them.
I'll be darned. Yeah, he was out there, of course, quite frequently at the factory. I'll be darned. It's a small world.
So, did you go back to Vietnam?
No, fortunately I went to Europe.
Okay.
I went to Europe again, and I was stationed at Heidelberg military community. I was assigned not to the medical unit, but to a military community, deputy community commander, as the NCOIC of a drug and alcohol rehab program.
Heidelberg Castle.
Yes, my son graduated from that castle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been to, that's a beautiful castle.
Yeah, we really liked that assignment. It was a good assignment.
I've interviewed a couple of British war brides, and they told me there was an unwritten agreement between the British and the Germans. The British told the Germans, if you do not bomb Oxford, you won't bomb Heidelberg. So neither town was damaged.
That's good, though. Yeah.
They said, you don't bomb our university, we'll bomb yours.
Yeah, I was a little skeptical at first because I'd always been assigned to medical type units, yeah, dispensaries, hospitals, so forth, to go to assigned to the community itself.
And what would you do in Heidelberg?
I was the NCOIC of the drug and alcohol rehab program. We give classes, educational classes to military units on drug and alcohol. I guess my proudest moment there, if you want to call it, would be I was selected to accompany Department of the Army congressional delegates through parts of Germany to explain the drug testing program. So I accompanied those delegates, and the fact that I was chosen as little OE7, out of all the people, why they chose me, I have no idea, but I enjoyed it, and they were nice people. But it was an education program.
How long were you at Heidelberg?
3 years.
3 years. Then where'd you go?
Then, after Heidelberg, I went to my last assignment at Fitzsimmons Medical Center in Denver.
Okay.
And I retired from there.
What'd you do at Fitzsimmons?
I was the NCOIC of Social Work Service at Fitzsimmons.
Okay. When did you retire?
I retired officially 1 August of, hold on now, it hasn't been that many years, has it? 81. Yeah, because I came back in 80. Had about 11 months to do and then retired.
What did you do after you retired?
I went to work for the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office in Golden, Colorado as the counseling supervisor for a medium-sized jail. I say medium-sized, it had, when I left, we had 1,400 inmates every day.
Yeah.
I was in charge of, my staff and I were in charge of deciding when inmates came in to do their interviews and based on their criminal history, personality, etc., decide which of these pigeonholes is best to put them for themselves' safety and maybe for the safety of others. And then we also, I ran all the inmate programs, education program, domestic violence programs. I didn't necessarily do them, but I coordinated it and stuff like that.
And when did you come to Ponca City?
When or why?
Both.
We came in, I retired from Fitzsimmons in '05. My wife worked just a few months. She worked for the Department of Defense as a systems accountant, what used to be Lowry Air Force Base, and had roots in Oklahoma, family, both of us. So we decided to come to Oklahoma and retire. We didn't want to be right on top of family. We had family in Missouri, so this was kind of an in-between. And we got here in '07, I believe it was.
Would you join the Army again?
Not at my age, but actually, I say that jokingly, but if I could do the job, I would.
I'd like to do a word association. I'll give you some words and you give me your reaction.
All right.
The first one is basic training.
Hard.
Germany.
Beautiful.
Fort Benning.
Georgia.
1st Cav Division.
Vietnam.
Simon Buckner.
Ship.
Vietnam.
Anke.
I drank.
Blood and guts. To put it bluntly. Not a good time.
Army medic.
Proud.
How do you want to be with? Oh, Lyndon Johnson.
President, Vietnam.
Richard Nixon.
Questionable.
Ho Chi Minh.
Bad news.
Why were we in Vietnam?
Well, ostensibly to save this dominoes from falling and keep us a step further away from communism, supposedly, or the free states or the free countries and stuff. But obviously, in retrospect, it didn't do any good. I don't think. I mean, I don't regret going, but I think the rationale for going never panned out.
Yeah. How do you want to be remembered?
I'm going to be remembered as a dedicated, as a soldier who did my duty, as a good husband, father, and a proud American.
Anything else you want to talk about?
You know, I don't. Other than if you were to ask me, have I had any lasting effects from Vietnam, I would say yeah. In fact, I denied, I don't know if I should even say it or not.
Go ahead.
I suspected I had PTSD years ago. I wasn't stupid. You know, I got my master's degree while I was in the military in the mental health field. But I was a sergeant, a senior sergeant, and I tried to deny it. First of all, I didn't know what Vietnam was. I'm sorry. I didn't know what PTSD was. Then when I finally found about it, read more about it when it became more of a popular term, I said, well, that sounds kind of like me to some extent. And but I went to one point. I went to see somebody in the mental health field myself, even as a paraprofessional counselor. They put me on some medication, and I didn't like the feeling, and I didn't. This isn't for me, and I denied that there was really. I didn't need anything anyway. But then there come a point, recently, I say recently, in the last couple of years, where I got tired of these dreams. I got tired of waking up and imagining myself that I was working on, that I was dead, that those bodies, that was me. Or the visions of just seeing and remembering some of the noises, the hollering, and people just running to and from, and kind of hysterical, and somebody else hollering for help, and seeing those bodies washed down. And perhaps the one that bothered me even more was one day in Ankei, in the company there, they brought a truckload, I say a truck, a deuce and a half, and it had, I don't know, at least 8 or 10 or so bodies in it. And my job, they asked me, or told me, to pull those body bags out, unzip it, make sure they were dead. And that really bothered me. I can, seeing some of those faces. And what bothered me the most, rather than zipping it out and looking, was the fact that those were American soldiers and they were stacked like cordwood. I felt so bad that here's soldiers that until a few minutes or hours ago, were just like me, doing their job, and now they're dead, and we don't even have the courtesy to put them side by side, that we had to stack them like wood. And I mean, it couldn't be helped, now don't get me wrong, in retrospect, but it bothered me that I had to do that and watch that. But other than that, I enjoyed most of my time in the military. I didn't enjoy that. But the end of that story is I finally, I put in for a disability for my hearing and PTSD, and they sent me to Claremore to a psychologist there. And when I got the rating back, I didn't expect anything because it's been so many years, But he said, verbally, he didn't tell me, they can't tell you the results.
Yeah.
But he said, you should have been drawing some money years ago. But anyway, it came back with an 80% rating on everything. They don't divide it up, PTSD, whatever. But so anyway, I started getting the check, and I mean, that was nice, but sometimes the dreams are still there. It didn't help that. My wife would wake me up sometimes, even as recently as, several months ago, maybe last year, flailing around my arms and says, "What are you doing?" And she said I was hollering like I was fighting somebody, get off, I don't know. I don't know if it was associated or not, but I think it was, because I couldn't sleep sometimes, wake up seeing all that stuff. And I read about it, but I guess I never saw myself as being tougher than that.
Well, sir, this is an excellent interview.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for the interview.
Well, thank you for doing it. That's
and
really
again,
neat that there are somebodies who's doing that kind of thing to preserve history and to show, in your case, Oklahomans, that there are people out there that we need to treat our veterans right.
And again, this is March 24th, 2021. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview with Jimmie Marston in Ponca City, Oklahoma. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.